Kate decided to change places, so here we are. I am picking it up on page 280. He lay back on the bed and tried to compose himself. What had he done? How many years had he added to his servitude by that moment of weakness? In another moment, he would hear the tramp of boots outside. They would not let such an outburst go unpunished. They would know now, if they had not known before, that he was breaking the agreement he had made with them. He obeyed the party, but he still hated the party. In the old days, he had hidden a heretical mind beneath an appearance of conformity. Now he had retreated a step further. In the mind he had surrendered, but he had hoped to keep the inner heart inviolate. He knew that he was in the wrong, and he preferred to be in the wrong. He would understand that. O'Brien would understand it. It was all confessed in that single foolish cry. Let's stop. What is he talking about? So he yelled out Julia's name, which indicates to the party that while he's been surrendering and working on his brain, his heart has not surrendered to the party, and he still hates the party, and he still loves Julia. So he had tried to keep that from them, and so he's like, that was stupid. That was a moment of weakness, and it's gonna put so many more years on my servitude because of that. Because now they know. He would have to start all over again. It might take years. He ran a hand over his face, trying to familiarize himself with the new shape. There were deep furrows in the cheeks. The cheekbones felt sharp, the nose flattened. Besides, since last seeing himself in the glass, he had been given a complete new set of teeth. It was not easy to preserve inscrutability when you did not know what your face looked like. In any case, mere control of the features was not enough. For the first time, he perceived that if you want to keep a secret, you must also hide it from yourself. You must know all the while that it is there, but until it is needed, you must never let it emerge into your consciousness in any shape that could be given a name. From now onwards, he must not only think right, he must feel right, dream right. All the while, he must keep his hatred locked up in himself like a ball of matter, which is part of himself and yet unconnected with the rest of him, a kind of cyst. One day, they would decide to shoot him. You could not tell when it would happen, but a few seconds beforehand, it should be possible to guess. It was always from behind, walking down a corridor. 10 seconds would be enough. In that time, the world inside him could turn over, and then suddenly, without a word uttered, without a check in his step, without the changing of a line in his face, suddenly the camouflage would be down, and bang would go the batteries of his hatred. Hatred would fill him like an enormous roaring flame, and almost in the same instant, bang would go the bullet. Too late or too early. They would have blown his brains to pieces before they could reclaim it. The heretical thought would be unpunished, unrepented, out of their reach forever. They would have blown a hole in their own perfection. To die hating them, that was freedom. So Winston seems to have this new goal, and the new goal is to keep the hatred for the party kind of locked up in himself, like a cyst, he says, that even is hidden from him until the right moment. And for him, the right moment is right before they shoot him. And so he imagines that, they're walking down, and he thinks, oh, you could probably guess when they're about to shoot you. And so you're walking down the corridor, and then all of a sudden it just kind of unlocks, and all this hatred just floods him, and he's so angry, and he hates the party so much, and he feels it so much. And then they shoot him, and it's like the last moment of freedom for him, because he died hating the party. That's what he wants so much. And then if he can do that, if he can accomplish that hatred in his last moments before death, then he won. He blew a hole right in their perfection, he says. And that is just his dream at this point. He shut his eyes. It was more difficult than accepting an intellectual discipline. It was a question of degrading himself, mutilating himself. He got to plunge into the filthiest of filth. What was the most horrible, sickening thing of all? He thought of Big Brother. The enormous face, because of constantly seeing it on posters, he always thought of it as being a meter wide, with its heavy black mustache and the eyes that followed you to and fro, seeming to float into his mind of its own accord. What were his true feelings toward Big Brother? There was a heavy tramp of boots in the passage. The steel door swung open with a clang. O'Brien walked into the cell. Behind him were the waxen-faced officer and the black uniformed guards. "Get up," said O'Brien. "Come here." Winston stood opposite him. O'Brien took Winston's shoulders between his strong hands and looked at him closely. "You have had thoughts of deceiving me," he said. "That was stupid. Stand up straighter. Look at me in the face." He paused and went on in a gentler tone. You're improving. Intellectually, there is very little wrong with you. Very little wrong with you. It is only emotionally that you have failed to make progress. Tell me, Winston, and remember, no lies. You know that I am always able to detect a lie. Tell me, what are your true feelings toward Big Brother? I hate him. You hate him. Good. Then the time has come for you to take the last step. You must love Big Brother. It is not enough to obey him. You must love him. He released Winston with a little push toward the guards. Room 101, he said. So, okay, we're about to go to room 101, and I keep telling you guys that we already know what is in this room. And based on our questions that we did for the previous chapters, I asked what you thought room 101 is, and you said the worst torture imaginable. And yeah, I would say that it definitely is. But okay, let's take it one step further. They are doing these very general tortures for everybody. So room 101 has to be what? It has to be something specific to that person. It has to be their own personal torture, right? Because we have been beating, we've been electrocuting. These are all processes that are very general. Winston says right off the bat that they do this to everybody. They're just beating for beating. This is nothing new, nothing out of the ordinary. So room 101 has to be different. And it is. And the difference is, it is specific. And what is Winston terrified of? I'm not going to tell you, but think back to Mr. Charrington's room above the shop and him and Julia. There was something that happened there, and he was so terrified, and he kept talking about the terrified thing that he was so scared of. And if you can figure out what that is, that's what's in room 101. And if you still don't know what it is, don't worry, because we're going to read about it for next time. And that's where I'll stop.